recording already. I always skip the first, like 3 seconds. I time myself in, and then yeah, boom, boom, boom. So yeah, hello, welcome to another episode of Sit Down for Stand Up. I mean, this guy doesn't need no introduction, so yeah, we know who it is. How's it going, Ali? We good?
I'm all good, man. Doesn't need an introduction. Yeah, like I do feel that though. I feel some people think I'm famous, and the majority of people have never ever heard of me or interested in anything I've done. So it's kind of a strange situation to be in. But it's a pleasure to be on here, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've already capitalized off this twice last night. I was at a gig and I told people I'm speaking to you, and one of them bought me a drink. So I'm already £6 in the green just for this pod alone. So
I'm invoicing you for that, Daniel. I'm getting that drink back. There's no way. I hope you enjoyed it because I'm going to bankrupt you. Interest on that drink is outrageous.
you're going to ruin me
That's
over it.
mad.
To be
What?
fair,
Because you what?
I'm just bragging that I got a drink for £6 in London.
Yeah, yeah. To be fair, yeah, it was probably a Diet Coke.
What are you
What's
saying?
what were they? Why did they buy you a drink? Because
Because I was talking to them about it, and they were like, "Oh, like the pod, like talking about the podcast." I was like, "Yeah, I'm getting some, big names on it," and I did name drop you, and then I was like, oh, "I've got to go now," and he was like, "Oh no, like tell me about it." They wanted me to ask you a question, so for me to stay and talk to them about having you on, they bought me a drink.
that's mad. Wow, people need to get a life. Honestly, people, it's embarrassing.
I
You
couldn't
don't
disagree more.
respect.
I couldn't disagree. Don't buy me a drink, I'm all in favour of that.
Oh, fair.
So
Well, you take what you can.
exactly. So I'll jump sort of straight into it. The reason for the podcast is because myself included, we look at someone like you who's
Sorry, Daniel. Sorry to stop you at the moment. I don't know. It must. I don't know if it's a problem.
yeah, I just lost you a bit.
My mic's kind of.
Yeah, got you again. Lost you again. Lost you. Right.
Take those out. Can
There
you?
you go. You're in business.
But yeah, I think that's on the computer microphone. Let's see if this works
You
again.
sound fine either way. No, lost you again.
Oh, that's coming.
There you go. Right. You take it out.
Yeah, sorry about that, mate.
No, no,
Does that? Can you hear me okay
I can hear
now?
you perfectly like that.
Right. Okay. Let's leave it then. There you go. All
Right.
right. Sorry about that.
No, so
Let me get a new mic.
I'll just put some like ASMR music in between of that. So we'll all be fine.
Perfect.
So yeah, I know we can see like the luscious hair now. The headphones were blocking
Oh,
it.
mate. Shocker, man. Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, this is it. You got to grow it out while you got it. Like, I think. I don't know. It's problematic for me going abroad anytime because everyone just thinks I'm Ed Sheeran everywhere. I mean, it's bad enough here, let alone when I was in Mallorca last weekend, and these Spanish people would look double take at me like, ah, and then I hear them go, "God, Ed Sheeran, oh, can't do it," and I'm like, "All right, great, this is good."
There could be worse people out there. I mean,
Could be worse people, 100%, but they're always laughing when they say it. They're never like, "Oh, how sexy." They're like, "Ah, Ed Sheeran."
I used to always get Jonah Hill, but then they always tagged it with before he lost weight. So look, you could have just left it at the
Just
Jonah
to
Hill bit.
clarify. Yeah, yeah. Just to clarify, you weren't taking Jonah Hill as the biggest compliment anyway, but they just was like, oh, but if you're thinking that he's like cool and thin now, no, not that
No,
version.
yeah,
I'm talking traditional Jonah Hill,
yeah.
unfiltered.
OG super bad Jonah is the look we was going for. So yeah, so reason for the podcast is so we look at like comedians like you who are absolutely killing it right now, and we think, how the hell am I ever going to get there? And 'cause I know there's no such thing as a finished article, but we're 99.9% there. Why and how? did we start comedy? How did we get into it in the first place?
Well, it's funny you say that about killing it first off, because I got to tell you, Daniel, it never feels like that. Like sometimes it'll feel like that briefly, but
Mhm.
it's a bit like, I think it's a bit like being a professional footballer in that like every week you've just got another game and you can win a few games in a row and start thinking, yeah, it's great, but then you start losing a few and you go, oh, we're done.
Mm.
It's interesting you say that, yeah, because that's nice. But I suppose part of that is never really, you've got to never accept where you are, and
Okay.
also keep believing that you'll get to a better place. I think. I mean, I had a lot of years. So basically, yeah. So I'll go back. So I did my first gig at uni. I mean, this is we're now talking 11 years ago. Did my
What
first ever
you?
gig. What
What you?
uni?
Yeah.
York,
Oh,
York
okay.
Uni.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So they had a really nice comedy society there. They were like set up to do host shows and stuff like that. And I did improv. I love doing improv, man. I had a really good time there. But I don't do improv now because I've lost my virginity and you're not allowed. But at the time, I was enjoying doing improv, but I was always scared of doing stand up. And then I was getting sort of partly depressed. So I kind of made a list. This was at uni in my second year. Kind of made a list of all the things that I could do to give myself some meaning and some purpose. And one of them was to do my first stand-up gig. So I did my first stand-up gig 2014. Really nice gig, really set up for it. Mates came. It was lovely. I feel like a lot of people's first gigs normally go quite well because you're so nervous. If you just
Mm.
get a laugh, you're normally like buzzing. Sometimes your friends come down. The one you do is like set up for new acts or whatever. So that was all good. But I was like disappointed that even though it went well on stage, I was disappointed that I thought people were going to come up to me being like, mate, I think you're now the best comedian in the world. I think like that was unreal. But people coming up to me just like, nice one, mate. Like same as the same to everyone else. And I was like, okay, well, I had this build up in my head of what the first gig was going to be like. There was going to be this crystallizing moment. I was going to be on stage like, oh, this makes sense. It's perfect. Everyone loving it. And I was kind of upset that it wasn't. So I kind of didn't pursue stand up. I kind of did the rest of uni. I did a couple more gigs here and there where like people were like, "Oh, we need some stand-ups to do," it. And I felt like, "Oh, I could do stand-up." And you know, when you start, you're like, "Yeah, I'll do stand-up. Yeah, whatever. I'll do a new
Mm.
10 minutes. I got a new 10. I'm kind of working on. By working on means like I thought about it in the pub the other day. I'll just
Yeah.
riff on that for 7 minutes, not realizing how bad these gigs are going. And but then yeah, when I finished uni, I had no intention of being a stand-up comedian. I wanted to work in advertising,
Okay.
and I was just getting rejected from everywhere. And then eventually I got a job, and my mate got me an interview for a job in high level recruitment. It was horrible. It was like an internship was horrible.
Mm.
Um,
I've done
and I
recruitment.
remember being sorry,
I've done recruitment.
you know it, yeah, yeah. So this is like
Yeah.
executive search. It was
Yeah.
just like,
I did blockchain and AI recruitment. I had a company for 4 years out in Gibraltar running it.
yeah,
But
wow.
yeah.
Blockchain and AI recruitment, mate. There's not many more sentences that would sort of like dry up a woman's vagina than that, is there? Sort of blockchain and AI recruitment. That's a tough sell at the bar, isn't it?
Well, the worst thing though is I got paid in 2017 100 Ethereum for a placement that I sold for
Wow.
10 grand because I needed to pay, like the quarter's rent in Jib. And if I had have forgot about it or done it, it'd have been worth 500 grand now, roughly.
Oh my
So
God, mate. That's horrible though, isn't it, man?
I'm
But you just
sorry
never
right
know,
there.
do you? You don't want to be not making the rent if you need to pay it, man. You wouldn't be on this podcast. You wouldn't be
No,
doing this. You'd be sat here
exactly.
with me.
Yeah. But
Ethereum could have got you out of this life.
they always say like, oh, if you'd held it all these years, but then what sort of psychopath would have something that's made like 1,000% return and not sell it?
100%. And also, you'd be sitting here now saying, "Oh, it's worth 500 grand," but you're like, "But then I'll hold on to it for another 10 years and it'll be worth 5 million
Hmm.
or something like that." And it will never end. And then eventually it'll probably just plummet and you end up selling it. So, yeah, it's really hard
And then
hindsight.
you get
But
mentally depressed and get into comedy. So all
yeah,
all
well,
all,
that's it,
all
right?
depression leads back to comedy.
All, all crypto leads to stand-up comedy. That's the old saying, he said. Um,
So yeah, we
yeah,
how
so
we started. We did a
yeah,
couple of
yeah.
opens
So
and
I
then
was, yeah, but again, I was kind of sad. I was living back with my parents. And I was just a bit miserable. And then I wrote out uh, what I wanted to do. I was like, what would I actually want to do? This life is not for me. This is I was getting rejected from all these advertising places and stuff. And I was like, two things I want to do is one, I'd want to be a professional stand-up comedian, and the other one was to be a football journalist because I couldn't
Okay.
be a footballer. So I'd be like, well, maybe I could be a journalist. Maybe I could hang out with footballers. That's gonna be that lame dude, Fabrizio Romano getting the scoop.
The tag
So
along like creeps into the picture at the end.
yeah, everyone get a big one. Everyone in. You get everyone in. Make it landscape. Yeah.
With some
Nice. Yeah.
inspirational quote, hashtag chasing dreams.
Chasing dream. Yeah. Getting people to hang back. Oh, Ronaldo. Everyone's getting one more, just with me in it as well. Just don't leave.
CR,
Yeah.
CR7 exclamation mark.
Yeah. So that was my two plans. So they're obviously quite daunting. So what I did was I literally got little notes out. There's little sort of A5 notebook. I ripped out pages of that, and I just made it as simple steps as possible. So, for instance, football journalist, I think there was four steps. I think it was like start writing articles for free, write articles for some money, get paid to write articles, football journalist.
Right.
And then stand-up comedian was like, do open mics, do well in competitions, get an agent, get on TV, professional comedian. That was it. It was like five. Suddenly it felt like, okay, it's a bit more simple process. So I started doing gigs. I started doing open mic gigs. But even in my first year or so, this would have been 2016, I was kind of did my time. I ended up changing jobs. I worked at a PR company. It was a lot more fun. People were lovely. I was enjoying my life a bit more. Moved out from my parents, moved in with some mates. So I was kind of I was gigs here and there. I was doing like maybe one a week. I don't remember. There was like a month that I didn't have any gigs. And I think in December 2016, I did three gigs a whole month. And I was like, and in that time, just December 2016, I got a personality test at work. It wasn't just me, they did it for everyone.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were trying to scope me out.
Sure, shy.
Yeah.
It's called
They
a
wanted to go
disciplinary.
this route. They wanted to give me an option that I'm just mental rather than obviously completely inappropriate in the workplace. So I did, and in the personality test review, it said Alistair likes living in the fantasy of what could happen rather than try to make it happen and fail.
A bit.
And that sentence specifically resonated with me so hard. I, I thought that is exactly what I'm doing with stand up. That year, 2016, I'd been like doing gigs here and there. Those basement gigs, the rubbish, shitty gigs that you do where you're going down there, there's only other comedians. They hate you. They don't want you to be there. If there are any audience in, they're mental. That's the only reason they're there. Like, there's
Yeah.
like a bloke with a bag of his own shit in it in the front row, and you're like, I hope he likes my material. But yeah, and I was just like, but really, what I was scared of that whole time was I was scared of that if I actually really tried, maybe I just wasn't going to be funny enough. If like I
Mm.
really stopped messing around, being like, well, I'm kind of enjoying my own life. I'll do comedy a bit. I kind of did comedy just to tell people I was doing comedy. But I was like, if I really tried, maybe I'll fail because I'm just not funny enough. And that's what I was scared of the whole time. And I was just tired of waking up on sort of Saturday and Sunday mornings just hungover, having had like the same nights out with my mates, like same bars, same drinks, same people.
Mm.
And I just eventually went, right, well, you got to do it at least to see. Let's see if I actually could do it. So that was like a big crystallizing moment for me. Start 2017, I made a promise to myself. I'm going to do 4 gigs a week every week.
Okay.
And at the end of this, if at the end of this year, I don't want to do comedy, I thought cool. But this year, I'm going to do 4 gigs a week every single week, right? And I started doing that. I just got in a relationship at the end of December, start of January. That failed after 3 months because I was like, I'm just doing these gigs now. She was really supportive. But I was just like, it just wasn't going to work. I was just working a day job doing these gigs, and then
Mm.
I was just doing any gig I could do. Basements of pizzerias and whatever gig was going. It was like, you want to go out to Eltham to do this gig in an old people's home. You're not allowed to use the letter E. I'd be like, yeah, I'm all good. See you there. Unpaid 45. I'll see you there. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Um, and then I remember being in Edinburgh 2017. I'd taken 2 weeks off work and I was there doing like a split bill with my mate. And I remember standing there flyering. And you flyed before?
No. Oh, I have. I own a pub, and I've done it on like a Friday night karaoke, just to get like
Yeah.
bums on seats.
just a little, but even a little bit, like, you know how soul destroying that can be. You're
Yeah.
out there flying, trying to get people in who don't want to talk to you. They're pretending you don't exist, right? And I just remember being there, out there flying, and I remember feeling like I was enjoying this life.
Mm. Even
Something
the
I hadn't
worst
really had.
bits.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Something I hadn't really had with, work and the nights out and stuff. I remember standing there on this corner in Edinburgh on Cowgate, having been getting ignored by people, trying to get people in. We had like, 4 people in, and I just thought, this is great.
Mm.
And that was the moment where I was like, I've got to try and make this my full time.
You're all in.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, but then that's it. And then it was kind of like, right, committing as much as you can. I think I was always scared of the people who just started doing comedy and just immediately they did like 100 gigs in 2 months. And you're like, how do you even know this is what you wanted to do? What was your actual life? But so it took me a couple of years to get there. But eventually I was like, this is it. I've got to do it. And then it's like stages. So to end of 2017, I remember I came runner up in Leicester Square, new act of the year. That was only because I'd gigged all that time in 2017, which a lot of people, my peers at that time, weren't gigging as much. And I had this sort of tight set. And then that was again, I remember the moment my parents were there. They'd not seen many of my gigs, but they were there for that one. And I remember having the little runner up thing, and I'd won 500 quid. And I remember that was the first time I saw them. They looked at me. They were like, "Wow, you're actually doing this."
Mm.
Because I told them before. I told in 2015. I told my mum I wanted to be a stand-up, and she was like, not having any of it. She was like, "If you wanted to do stand-up, you would have done it by now."
Mm.
She was like, "You didn't want to do stand-up because you like it. I like eating biscuits and watching Coronation Street. No one's going to pay me to do that." And it was like this fantasy thing that she was like, "No one likes their jobs. You got to go get a proper job because you can't be a stand-up."
Yeah.
And then I remember standing there with them with the thing, showing them, and I just felt like for the first time they were like, he might actually be able to do this after a couple of years. So then I asked my job at that time if I could take all my annual leave off in 1 month, so I could just do Edinburgh full month. So I did that, and then did another year of that, and then and this time I was gigging 5 times a week. I said I'm going to give 5 times a week every week this year. And then end of 2018, I asked my job, could I go down to 4 day weeks? Or could I take a pay cut, go down to 4 day weeks? They said yeah. They're really nice about it all. Still took all my annual leave. So I didn't. So at this point, I'm giving up holidays. I'm not using any annual leave
You're
at any other point of the
sacrificing
year.
stuff.
Well, that's it, right? And at that point, I'm in my mid 20s. Like all my mates, everyone's going love beautiful trips. They're going out shagging and having
Yeah.
a laugh and getting pissed up and stuff. And I've just got to basically got to resign myself to be like, I'm going to try and do as much of that stuff as I can, but realistically, it's not going to happen like that. I'm not going to have these amazing trips and
Mm.
stuff. And then I was sort of fortunate that 2020, I still had a job during COVID because I was not earning enough from stand up to go professional.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm kind of like earning some money now from stand up, but you couldn't live off it. It's some
Mm.
money, adds a bit, and I'm still saying to myself, I'm saving all the money I get from stand up, I'm saving it and I can spend it on comedy. But that's it. I'm not allowed to like just start bevving up and stuff. That's still from my salary. So I was lucky during COVID, I had this job because then suddenly I was like, all right, okay, still able to get money. Um, and then COVID was annoying for me because I was going to do my first show in 2020 at the Fringe. I was going to like announce myself. This is me. This is what's about.
Mm.
Um, so I couldn't do that. And I remember being on the phone with my producer at that time, being like, he's like, everything's rolling over to 2021. Don't worry. Get the same room, everything. And I went, oh, but what if it's still happening in 2021? It was like, don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about?
Mm.
And then obviously 2021 Fringe wasn't normal. It didn't happen like normal, kind of sort of just last minute thing.
Yeah.
So then at that point, I was like, well, what can I do? I was living with my housemate, who is a friend of mine for years from uni, and he was having a really tough time. And I was sort of obviously having a tough time, couldn't do stand-up stuff. So I was like, right, well, what could we do? What have I always wanted to do? I've always wanted to do sketches.
I was going to jump on that, yeah, because I watched like a lot of your sketches on TikTok, on Instagram, and it seems like you've got a transferable comedic ability, not just on stage, but also just a general aura. Oh,
Consistently shit. That's
fluffing
the
you.
that's the vibe. Yeah, you won't laugh at the sketch, you won't laugh at the stand-up. It's consistent. It's what people want, know what they're getting. That's sweet of you to say. I don't know, actually, but I always, you know what, it was Daniel. Like I always wanted to do sketches, but
Mm,
similar with the fear of stand-up, I was just scared of what people would say. Not
mm,
real people, like people like my mates, other stand-ups that they go, "Oh, this is so cringy. Ugh, this is so embarrassing," and
mm.
it put me off for years doing it.
Okay.
And then it kind of forced my hand 2020. So me and my housemate, we did these sort of landscape. I mean, we call it like long form. It was like 2, 3 minute long sketches and stuff. On put them on. I was like, maybe I'll put them on Facebook. Maybe they'll do well on Facebook. You know, I was like back in that
You've got to
day. It was
choose the
like James.
platforms now, haven't you?
Well, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So Reels didn't exist. Like and TikTok, I was like, I didn't know what TikTok was. I was like, I don't want to do this. And then, and then eventually we started going to like vertical stuff, and I started doing Reels and TikToks, and some of them were doing well. And I remember the first time a TikTok did well, and I couldn't believe it. We were celebrating with our mates. I looked at, 'cause I didn't even like have notification on TikTok or anything. I just was like, oh, I wonder if that video got any views. Like thinking it might have got 500 views or something. And I remember specifically it was 109,000 views, and this I had no followers or whatever. And I was just like with my mates being like 109,000 views. I was like, what? That's crazy, man. We couldn't believe it. We're like, what? How many people have seen it? It's insane. And then I was fortunate that I got on Reels early because they were pushing Reels Instagram. So they were start promoting some of my Reels because they were like, all right, we want to promote people who are doing Reels. I was doing Reels consistently. So like suddenly I was getting like 5 million views. And I remember leaving my house, for your designated walk. And I was like, I'm probably not gonna be able to walk down the street, bloody hell. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everyone's gonna be stopping me, being like, "Are you the guy who did that reel about dating in COVID in a supermarket that was 7 seconds long?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it was me, mate. Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. Girls, just try to keep your distance. You know what I mean? Don't swarm me."
I'm actually
So
going to, I want to get the maths right on this. I'm going to see how many views you've got now on total on your TikTok. So, and I always find this my so yeah, 23.2 million likes. That is 25% of this UK's population. When you
yeah,
look at them sort of stats, it's
yeah, it's mad.
mind-boggling from where you came from doing open mics with five other comedians, no audience in a cellar, to now, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's
how do you deal with that when it comes to sort of like, and not an ego factor because you're incredibly down to earth, but do you need to give yourself a reality check from times to time?
I kind of avoid it. You know what? I've had a bit of a tough week this week with comedy. And my lovely girlfriend, who the partners of any comedians is God bless them because it's
Hmm.
not fun. It was like, what's it like dating a comedian? Probably it's laugh a minute, isn't it? It's like no, it's like they're deeply they have an unfound sadness about their life, and the humor they do use is usually take the piss out of you. So that's
Especially when you order a curry. So
yeah.
I've seen you bit. It's like
Correct. Yeah, that's going to be the new special. But I like that joke. It's a shame to put that joke to retirement, man. But that was based on real events. That one.
do you find obviously like being like all over the internet and stuff, it does sort of force your hand to write new comedy all the time because people would have seen it, or do they want your greatest hits?
I have the kind of opposite problem in that I always love coming up with new ideas, and that happens very
Mm.
naturally. But I have the problem is that I don't sit down and work on the ideas I do have to make them great. I just kind of, I'll just try this, I'll just have a laugh with this and stuff. And so I enjoy that. But then actually, when you then compare yourself with other comics, when you're in a lineup with some really great comics, you see they've spent, months, years just honing a nice, like, 4 minute routine. And it's perfect. You go, wow, I don't have anything like that. So I think actually I feel now what I'm putting myself under pressure now to do is to not just give people a good show, to aspire to perfection, to be like, that's amazing. I want people to come away and to think, wow, I've seen something special. Not just be like, he was fun from the internet. He wasn't
Mm.
bad, was he? Which I've
Yeah,
definitely done a lot of shows like that to kind
he was
of to
nice.
be
He
like,
was good.
he was good, wasn't he? Yeah. No, I might see him again. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, like I want it to be more like, wow, we watched something special, and to not just be like, there's laughs and there's laughs. I not want to just be like, yeah, that routine's, yeah, it's cool. If the crowd's nice, it does well. If they're a bit tough, it doesn't. I want it to be like, no, that's undeniable.
Mm.
So that's kind of what the pressure is.
Okay.
Um,
And I've got so with new aspiring comics, this is all this is what I want this aimed for. Where do you think? And funny enough, Malike from episode 8 I did on this, she wanted me to ask you this question. Where should a comedian be at, say, 50 gigs, at 100 gigs, at 250 gigs? And what is the best way to monitor your progression?
But that's a tough one. I think there's a lot of analogies when it comes to comedy. I certainly was coming up with them when I was starting out just to give myself some sort of sanity.
Mm.
I think one was that it's like all comedians are just driving cars towards where you want to be. And some they'll be driving and they start slow and they speed up and they speed up and they speed up. Other people will just drive out the gates and they're fucking great and they're really getting there, but then they might break down later. You know what I mean? Like there's as long as you keep moving towards your intended target, I
Mm.
think don't worry about like the milestones of like 50, 100 or whatever. What you've always got to be doing is to be writing and gigging. That's the only way you're going to do it, man. So always aspire. Can my next gig be better than my last gig? That's basically what you got to do. I think that the comedians that I know who are the best and who I um, listen to and look up to,
Mm.
there's never a set goal of like when I do this venue, then I'll be happy. It's like you got to enjoy the process of getting better and push yourself to write more and push yourself into the stuff that aren't you're not strengths. I love riffing on stage, sitting coming up with stuff. So now I'm really pushing myself to sit down and write. And even if it takes me half an hour to just get an extra line in a routine that
Mm.
exists already, that elevates the routine by another 2%, that's what I've got to do to try and get myself there. So I wouldn't put yourself under too much pressure when you're starting out because I think also we're gonna start, and this is horrible because no one wants to hear this. No one wants to hear this. I remember when I started, you want to hear the secret sauce. You want someone to
Yeah,
be like,
I want the
"Yo, just
formula.
yeah,
Yeah.
just what you could do is do jokes about donkeys, mate. Honestly." And then you start doing that, and then
Dong. I knew I was
get
missing something.
get the pen down, mate. Everyone goes horses. Do donkeys,
Yeah,
mate.
I was doing
Honestly.
mules. I was the other way, but
Oh well, yeah. Well, can't say
yeah.
that nowadays, Daniel. You know what I mean? So
Just drop the M bomb.
still doing, yeah, exactly. Yeah, still doing that material. Yeah, got get a few gigs in Blackpool, do you, mate? Though they're nice up there. But yeah. So,
Oh,
and
Blackpool.
unfortunately, it's just not. You've got to keep working, and also do different gigs. And no one was hear this at the start, but unfortunately, this is also a very free time. Very free. You get to do whatever you want. You get to do whatever you want. So do it. If you
Mm.
want to talk about this, do it. Don't be like, well, I've got to do that joke because that joke worked. It's like if you don't like it, don't worry about it. No one's paying you. My thing is, if you're not getting paid, you're allowed to do whatever you want. As soon as you start getting paid, things change because you're sort of providing a service. But if you're not getting paid, do whatever you want. That might mean a 5 minute set at an open mic gig. That might mean a 10 minute open spot at a club. You're allowed to do whatever you want. So make it your own, right? Right, perform, get better and better, collaborate with other comics, ask other comics for bit. I think that's what again we miss out in this country. I think when I was out in America, they have it a lot more. There's a lot more of a feeling of collaboration.
Mm.
They'll ask each other, "What about this bit? Do you think I've got any toppers, whatever?" Some of my best gags in my set now, other comedians have given me them. That's why I made
Mm.
sure at the end of the last special coming out soon, I made a point of like thank you to all the comedians who helped with this because I couldn't
That's
say
good.
specifically who's done what or whatever, but that's a great thing as well because the way the industry is sets you up to feel like you are in competition with each other.
Mm.
That's not true. People always want laughs. People always want laughs. And so you collaborate, help each other out. It'll be great. You'll all get better together quicker, for sure. Because ultimately, the industry makes us think the bosses are people behind laptops who are decision makers who work at agencies and networks broadcasters and stuff. The truth is the boss is the audience,
Mm.
as we've seen with social media.
Yeah.
People now bypass that. Throughout my career, I never had anyone tap me on the shoulder and be like, "You're going to be a star. I'm going to make you a star. You're amazing." I never had it, right? And it was only when I started getting all these followers that those same people came back to me. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens. When these people who you know they've got an email sitting in their inbox from you that they haven't replied to. Now, they might be busy, or whatever. It's fair enough. So I
Yeah.
don't try and take it personally, even though it feels personal at the time. But it's a beautiful thing when these same people come back to you and are like, "Oh, we love your stuff. Honestly, we've loved it for ages." It's like, no, you haven't. You have
Yeah.
not.
Don't
You
lie.
love the number of followers that it says. You love that there's videos popping up that your mates are sending you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You love money. That's why you're on that side of the table. And you got
Mm.
to remember as well, Those people sat on that side of the table, they will never be able to do what we do. And I say we because anyone who's on stage, doesn't matter that you're doing the dog and duck on a Tuesday night to no people, doesn't matter. Anyone on stage is we. We're all comedians. Anyone who's brave enough to put them on stage, themselves on stage, get judged in the immediacy for what they trying to make people laugh.
Mm.
We, they can't do what we do. If they could, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah,
They
they're
can't.
monetize themselves.
So don't worry about them because they will always stay the same. The agencies and all this, their stock kind of stays the same. Your stock can rise very quickly. At some point, it could do nothing for years and then rise. I mean, was it like a? I'm not sure it's his own, but he made it. He used it, Mickey Flanagan, when he won Edinburgh Fringe Newcomer after being a amazing club comic for ages. He was like, it took me 12 years to become an overnight success. So
Yeah.
don't worry about it. I've got one of the quotes on my wall that I like is like, it's never too late to make it. So just keep going. Don't worry about the small milestones because the journey is the goal.
That is like even for me that is yeah inspirational. Like because we do look at it and we portray it as how do I say it's like we portray it as yeah we want the overnight success, we want all the glory, but we are all just in this together. Like what's the Russian word? Comrades.
Yeah, yeah, comrades.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's true, and you might see it, and your peers or whatever. There's people who make it quickly.
Mm.
And I've been in this game long enough that they don't all last either. It's not like everyone's on some linear thing that's like, well, I'm not there now, I won't be ever. There's people who get lots of opportunities and they might be great and they might be fantastic, but for whatever reason, I mean, I know people who won all these competitions when I was starting and beat me and all that and were great. And I'm not saying they're bad people and I'm trying to have a go at them, but it's like it's hard to watch. You're just like, oh, they're so great. Now they work office jobs. It's done.
Yeah. How do you try and stay consistent then?
So I think the thing that helps me is I always think in the short term. I think
Yeah.
it's hard for me to think I want to do 10,000 gigs by 2031 or whatever.
Mm.
I just think focus on the little stuff and the rest will look after itself. So that's what I did. 4 gigs a week. Just
Mm.
stick to that. And then you can always reevaluate. Don't say 4 gigs a week until I croak and when I'm
Yeah.
83. Like 4 gigs a week for a year and see how that goes. That's what I'm doing now. I'm really lazy with writing. So what I'm doing now is if I can go to the gym for an hour, I can write for an hour. So every day, 20 minutes sketch writing, 40 minutes stand up writing, and
Mm.
push myself to do that. And I do the Jerry Seinfeld method. And this helps where it's like I sit down, phone on airplane mode,
Like
got
separate room. Yeah.
yeah, so and it's like you don't have to write, but you can't do anything else. And I
Mm.
think it's stuff like that, like you've got to give yourself some leniency. So don't be like, I've got to come up with everything all the time, I've got to gig all the time, I've got to smash every gig. Just get yourself there. 95% of success is turning up, right? So just put yourself in that situation, get to that gig, feel good on stage. Don't be like, oh my God, if this joke doesn't work, I'll fucking cry. Just feel good on stage. Sit down at a laptop. As you say, just be in the moment there. Be like, I don't even need to write a single word because you know what? It might take you an hour to write one gag. You might use that gag for 10 years.
Mm.
It's always worth it.
Yeah, the investment in in the long run is paramount. So the question I always ask at the end of a podcast is my favorite question. It's a two-parter. Um, I don't really give a shit about the first bit, in all honesty, but I ask it to be nice. It's all about the second bit. Part one, what was your favorite moment on stage? And second part, what time did we bomb the hardest?
Well, favorite moment on stage, then I'll go through quick because obviously no one cares. But it was actually well, I guess there's two on stage. But I'll give it two because it's to do with both of the shows that I've done. I've done two shows now. I recorded both of them. The first, um, the greatest part of the first one, the greatest moment was I got to bring my dad out and he welcomed me on stage for my first special.
I was,
So
oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that was, yeah.
so yeah, that and I think because it really, I mean, I'm do comedy because he really got me into it as a kid, and and he really championed me and wanted me to be successful. And so to
Mm.
be able to give him that moment, I mean, he's in his 70s now, so to be able to give him that moment on stage at the Leicester Square Theatre, I mean, he's an extrovert as well. He likes that sort of stuff. So to let him be on the stage of the Leicester Square Theatre and come on with him announcing my name was like, it's pretty special. And then the second one was at Hackney Empire, and I finished the show and I got a standing ovation. And I got a standing ovation in the first show at Leicester Square, but it felt a bit more like, well, we're just giving you this because we sort of,
All of fun.
you know what I mean?
Like,
We're like,
everyone's
we're
clapping in a musical like that. Like,
yeah, you know what I mean? Like we're happy you've done it, it's great. And then I think the and doing that second show, I'd started to get a couple people stand up after it, which was rare for me. I never had that really. And then on tour and in Edinburgh, and then yeah, in the Hackney Empire, and everyone stood up, and it just felt very. It felt so organic.
mm,
It felt like people meant it, and you know that stuff's a bit wanky, but it was kind of wild to see like 1,000 people sort of stood up applauding you
yeah.
after having put in quite a lot of work into that show, and also because it was a very personal show, it was a very very vulnerable show. So it was that made it a lot. But I mean, when I've died, I mean, there's plenty. I'll give you two. I'll give you two for that one then as well. So both
Yeah.
gong shows,
Okay,
both gong
cool.
shows. So my sixth ever gig, I think, was the Blackout up the creek.
Oh, I did that last Thursday.
How was it?
Uh, 3 minutes 40. I did a joke about the LGBT. Basically, it was my mate. I was like, I do a fat bit. I was like, he's so fat and ugly. He's just been granted a visa for a country. I can't remember what the country's called, but I know they wave a rainbow flag and
Yeah,
straight up,
really
bomb, bomb,
well.
bomb. Yeah, off I go.
Done, done. Yeah, it's like that sometimes.
Yeah. But I thought of the joke a minute before I went on stage, so I don't know why I did it. And
Sometimes it's like that though, man. Sometimes because you're in the moment, you're like, I know how to deliver this so well. It's so clear to me. But that's what I'm saying. Why not? Now you know you can listen back to it. Do you record your sets?
yeah, every single set.
Every single set, listen back. You know, and I think I found it hard to start doing that. I didn't do that until I was a couple of years in. Get a just a technical thing. Get if you don't have already, make sure you have something where you have the option of listening to it at 2 times speed, not just an efficiency thing, but it just makes it more bearable. Listening
Mm.
to the bad ones back. And because you listen to so many gigs that you just get on 2 times, it just gets better and quicker. But
Gong
yeah,
show
that I
bombing.
find that. Sorry,
Sorry, gong show bombing.
gong show bombing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this the first one up the creek blackout, and I guess people have probably talked about it on this pod already. But if not, if you don't know, you get 2 minutes grace period to do whatever you want, and then you're trying to get to 5 minutes, and after that 2 minutes. You've got 3 minutes where the audience are allowed to gong you off. If they don't like you, they can boo, and they're told if they don't like you to gong you off. They put cards up, right? So sixth gig up the creek, 2 minutes grace period. I did 2 minutes 6 seconds,
Mm.
and I feel like that 6 seconds was just an administrative. That's how long it took someone to press pause on the
Gonna find
on
the
the
card on the
timer.
table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just dying, man. I went up second, which is not the worst spot actually, because people are nicer at the start. And the guy before me beat the gong, but he was just so likable. He didn't really have many jokes or whatever.
Mm.
He was just really likable. He was just talking about watching football at the weekend. And the MC came back up and was like after him was like, all right, when I said like gong people off if you don't like them, that's also if they're just like coming up and chatting. Don't like
Oh, you
so I
got
feel
dark.
like it was already it was the act that goes on after the audience has had a talking to, where they're
Yeah.
like, you've got to be nastier, and the next act's like, fuck's sake, why are you saying that, man? Just time that's gone. So yeah, they were ready for me to be like, right, if this guy's shit, we're getting him off. And yeah, just had nothing, just had nothing,
Mm.
couldn't get any laughs, stressing. And then the critical point was, and this is just before the thing went to say 2 minutes,
Yeah, the blackout bit. Yeah.
the blackout bit, just before that, I said, and I was on Google, and someone just shouted, "You should have Googled some jokes."
Sorry, that's a good heckle. Like you
100%.
got
And it was
respect.
immediate as well. It wasn't a big pause. It was just, he was quick riff. The crowd pissed themselves. They were
Yeah.
like, brilliant. And their laughing to his heckle went through the blackout fade bit. And then it was like, all right, great, we can get this guy off. And it's like the audience had ended on a joke. It was like the audience had ended on a good one. And then, yeah, I came and I was on the way back that night thinking, oh God, I'm just got to give this up. This is hopeless. and then I did King Gong Comedy Store.
That was my
I'm sure.
first one. That was my first ever
Yeah,
show.
mad. Isn't it mad that so many people, such an early gigs are the Gong shows because it's
Yeah.
like you can get on them
And
and
that's
just
more brutal.
oh mate, 100%. So again, I'm sure it's been talked about, but you know, you don't get the 2 minute grace period. Same
Uh,
rules apply, and they have like 3 times as many acts. So they're like, we need to get these people off the stage, and it's at the Comedy Store, so it's like 300, 400 people in.
mm,
Um, but that one, yeah, that was really horrible because I had a really good slot. I was at the end of the first half,
yep.
and it was my first time doing it, and it was 20. I want to say April 2016. So I've been gigging for maybe about 6 months in London
Okay.
and doing like one or two a week. And I kind of had some jokes I felt. And then I was like, right, well, I was really nervous. I was like, right, I'll just start with my strongest stuff and just go down and see how it goes. And it was Halloween. So it must have been October actually then.
My birthday. Represent.
Yeah. Oh shit. Oh well, spooky
Mm,
guy.
mm.
So it was Halloween. And so I remember there were four blokes there who were dressed as the Grim Reaper, and because they were there for comedy deaths, and they each,
Good.
yeah,
Mm.
each had a pitcher of beer under their seats. So it was a rowdy crowd. Everyone was,
Ah.
yeah. And I went on, and you know what? I was kind of surviving. You know those ones in gong shows where the jokes are just about okay,
Mm.
but one punchline that isn't that level will get you off. And I was kind of, okay, I was like, all right, I'm doing, and I passed a couple minutes, and I did this joke about having a fringe, and then it went well. It went like well for me. I was like, oh, okay, that's another. I'll get another 10 seconds here, and then this bloke shouted out from right deep at the back of the crowd, "You stole that!"
Ah.
And I was like, and it was caught me so off guard, and I was like, what? And he went, "You stole that from Sean Locke." And I went, "No, I haven't. Fuck off." But the crowd immediately, boo, and cards up, boom, fuck off. And now it wasn't even that, oh, he's shit. It was like, oh, we've been listening to this bloke who's a joke thief at the Comedy Store. And because I was just before the break, it was like, it wasn't let's continue the show. It was like, well, he's off, right? Get your drinks. And so I wanted to leave as soon as possible because I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I felt so bad. I was like, they all think I'm a fucking folk joke thief. I don't even know what joke he's talking about. And I got my bag and stuff, and but I had to go through all the crowd that were now, and they're all looking at me like you fucking wrong and dickhead, you know. Oh, you think we're gonna fall for that or whatever? And also because Sean Locke's so beloved as well. It wasn't even like it was from like an American comic or whatever that people might think was shit, whatever. It was like Sean, obviously. So I was just like headed out, and I remember specifically I had like tears in my eyes. I was in Piccadilly, the Piccadilly Circus, and going to Leicester Square, and I put my headphones on immediately, and this song will always take me back to that moment. Start Me Up, Rolling Stones came on. That was just click shuffle, and I click shuffle, being like, whatever
Old
song this
man
is.
cry.
Yeah, basically. And every time I hear that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in Leicester Square crying. In a joke thing. I went back and looked it up, and Sean Locke, so it was an act out with his hair flicking like that. And Sean Locke had an act out that he did on 8 out of 10 Cats about hair flicking.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't know whether it was some sort of from watching it as like a 14-year-old or whatever to, 9 years later, just in my head, I thought, but yeah, I never did that joke again, ever. I
Yeah.
was like, right, that's it. And that was in like my best five at that time. So I was like, oh, that's that done. Yeah, that was horrible.
I love it. I love the humanity. Last question. I'll make a quick one. Do you think if you went under and because it's all about gong shows, they are brutal. If you did one of them, like go to a makeup place, whatever they're bloody called, and you changed your look, so no one knew it was you. Do you reckon you could still pass a gong show every time now, or do you think they are still just as brutal? And no matter how good you are, if the crowd's out for blood, they're out for blood.
I reckon I could pass a gong show every time now, but I don't think I'd win it. I think what you got to remember with gong shows is it's a game. It's not stand up, it's a game. right? So it's a stand-up game, but it's a game nonetheless. So it's about what type of jokes you have. It's about when you go. It's about what that particular crowd kind of likes. I mean, I've seen people win gong shows, not win, but get to the final with no material, but the crowd just thought they were so fun as a person. And I've seen other people do banging jokes, bang, 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 and then get one wrong, and then it's like, oh fuck this person, or whatever. So I think I could beat it because also to be fair, the way I write is quite tight. So I've got enough jokes that I could just bang through a 5 minute set. But I wouldn't win because I think when you're doing it longer, your routines, you try and lengthen them out and go into interesting places. You need a bit of time to set them up. And I think those competitions suit someone who's just religiously doing fives and tens because they're just like, this is my time. I know how long this is. So that happens with competitions. It's funny when you start out you can do sometimes you can do quite well in competitions that are like 5 minute sets, and then you come back to it like 1 or 2 years later, and you're doing worse because you're used to having a 20 on stage where you can like really get into it and stuff. So I think I could do it. I think I could pass a gong show. I'd be upset if I couldn't,
Mm.
but I also think I don't think I'd win because I think someone else would come with like a banging five that I just wouldn't be able to beat.
And it's all whatever happens that night. Like, do you know what I
100%. And
mean?
also, it's like people will win gong shows and they'll go on and do nothing else. You know what I mean? Like it's just a mad, chaotic night. And I feel for people because when I started, there was still a way you could get into clubs by like sending in a video, whereas now it just feels like that way is kind of completely gone.
Yeah, it's like, dude, thank you ever so much for coming on in, man. I really
Pleasure's
appreciate
all
it.
mine.
I thought we were gonna give like a virtual high five then.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude, that'd be so.
Elbow to elbow, remember that? Yeah, that's the rule, isn't
Gosh, yeah,
it? Cheers, brother, man. Much love, yeah.
No, thank you so much for having me on. I hope it's helpful. But look, whatever you're doing, if also I will say this just before I go, if you're listening to this a new comic, just by getting on stage one time. Just by getting on stage one time and doing what you've always wanted to do in your heart of hearts, you've done more than most people ever will in their lives. If people have said your name in a room and people have started applauding and you've walked up to the stage, remember that is a moment that you have dreamed of when you were younger. So do not be too hard on yourself. Live every moment, love it, and give yourself a pat on the back because a lot of people they'll never get to experience doing their dream for 1 minute. And you've probably done it hundreds of times at this point. So enjoy it and well done.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate that.